In this video, you understand the difference between family parameters, built-in parameters, and shared parameters. You also create a new shared parameter file and create parameters to control a wall-mounted shelf. To begin, we'll create a new family. On the Revit home screen, go ahead and create New Family. In the New Family Select Template File dialog, we'll begin by selecting Generic Model, Wall-Based, and then go ahead and select Open. You'll now note that we're looking down on a floor plan in the Family Editor. Because we're using a wall-based family, you'll note that we have a wall represented in plane, and we also have a piece of text informing us of the placement side of our content. Let's now investigate the parameters in this particular family. To do this, on the Create ribbon in the Properties panel, we'll go ahead and select Family Types. In the Family Types dialog, you can now see a series of built-in parameters. These are default parameters that exist in this particular family. They are driven by categories. So let's just take a note of the built-in parameters that exist in the Family Types dialog. You'll notice here that we have very few. We have constraints, default elevation. I have some IFC built-in parameters. And you can see here that I have identity data. Let's now see what happens if we change the category. So go ahead and select OK. On the Create ribbon, again in the Properties panel, this time we'll select Family Category and Parameters. In the Family Category and Parameters dialog, you can see presently the current category is Generic Model. That's also displayed to us in the Properties palette, and you'll see here we have Family Generic Model. We'll now change the category. So let's scroll down and we'll select Windows and click OK. We'll now go back to the Create ribbon in the Properties panel and select Family Types once again. Notice now we have many more built-in parameters. Under Dimensions, you can see that we now have some built-in parameters to control the width and height of our new window. You'll notice we also have some analytical properties in here and so on. So you can see that the categories actually control how many built-in parameters you'll have within these family types. A key thing to understand here is these cannot be edited or deleted or amended in any way or form. Click OK to the Family Types dialog. We'll now set our category to Furniture. So again, to do this, we can go back to the Create ribbon in the Properties panel and select Family Category and Parameters. Here, we'll go ahead and select Furniture. And then click OK. Furniture is a fairly wide category, but most elements that we create could be controlled with length, width and height. To save us constantly having to create the same family parameters for each new family that we build, we can use a shared parameter. As its name suggests, we can create the shared parameters once and then use these in multiple families. This, of course, is much more efficient. The other advantage is that shared parameters can be tagged and scheduled. We must carefully consider the management and naming of shared parameters so they do not conflict with other parameters within Revit. So let's see how we'd first create a shared parameter file. To do this, we'll go to the Manage ribbon. And on the Manage ribbon in the Settings panel, go ahead and select Shared Parameters. In the Edit Shared Parameter dialog, we'll click Create to make a new shared parameter file. Notice that the file of type is a text file. So we'll now give this a name. In this example here, I'm going to simply call this Training, but in reality you give us a dedicated name, perhaps using your company prefix or suffix. So let's go ahead and click Save. Before we can create any new parameters, we need to create some groups. The reason for this is we could have several different types of parameter relating to different categories. As an example, we just talked about furniture, but we could also have title blocks in there. We could have parameters for doors, windows, and so on. And so we don't have them all mixed up in the same group, we can create separate groups just to make things a little bit easier for us. So here, we'll go ahead and click on New Group. And for the group name, we'll type in Furniture. Go ahead and click OK. And you'll now notice that we can create new parameters. So let's click on New. Now, one thing to take note of here is you can't go back and amend or edit these parameter properties. So once you've typed it in, it's fixed. And the reason for this is that as you create these, Revit generates a GUID, which is a global unique identifier. So the only way to change it is to delete the parameter and recreate it. So we have to be careful that we don't make any errors as we type in these names. So to keep this fairly generic, so I can use these parameters across a wide range of different furniture items, I'm just going to refer to it as perhaps unit length, unit width, unit height, and unit depth. So let's start off by typing in unit length. Another thing to consider here is your naming conventions for the families. Revit is case sensitive, so an uppercase U would be seen different to a lowercase u. So the discipline will now be set to common, and the type of parameter remains on length, and we can click OK. Let's now create another new parameter. This one will be unit width, and again we can accept all the defaults and click OK. We'll make another one for unit height, and click OK. Another one for unit depth. And finally, we'll create one for the unit finish. So this one's going to be a little bit different because it will control a material. So again, we'll click on new parameter. We'll type in unit finish. But now the type of parameter will be changed from a length to a material. So let's go ahead and click material and then click OK to the parameter properties dialog. Let's now click OK, and those parameters are now ready to be used. Let's now utilize some of these shared parameters. To do this, we'll select the Create ribbon, and once again, in the Properties panel, we'll select Family Types. We'll now go ahead and create a new parameter. With the family parameter, we'd have to keep defining the same parameter each time. However, with the shared parameter, we can create the shared parameter once and then utilize that for many different purposes. So let's go ahead and select shared parameter. We'll then click on select, and now we can actually go ahead and choose our parameters. So in this case here, we could select unit width and click OK. Notice that the name, the discipline, and the type are all grayed out because we've obviously defined these within that shared parameter file. The default is to use a type rather than an instance, which is fine. And we're going to keep this grouped under dimensions, and we can click OK. We'll now see our new shared parameter added into the Family Types dialog. Let's now go ahead and add in the height, depth, and the material. So we can go back to New Parameter, click on Shared Parameter Radio button, and then select. And in here, we want to select Unit Height. Again, we'll click OK. All the defaults stay the same, and we can select OK again. We'll create another new parameter. Once again, select Shared Parameter Radio button, and then select. And here we want the unit depth. Click OK. And finally, we'll create one more for the unit finish. Okay, this one was the material. And we should notice that here we can just review those. So the discipline is common and the type of parameter is material. And Revit is suggesting that we group these under materials and finishes, which seems logical. And I'll click OK. Okay, so there are our shared parameters now set up for this particular family. The last thing we'll do here is make sure that the organization and order of our parameters makes sense. So I think we'll start with unit width. So we'll select unit width, and then we can simply move this up the list. Then we'll get unit height, and we'll put that under unit width. And finally, unit depth. Okay, let's click OK to the Family Types dialog. And we'll now save our new family. On the Quick Access toolbar, click on Save. And of course, you'll notice that we're currently saving an RFA file. That's a Revit family file. And let's call this family Bookshelf. We'll click Save. Okay, so you've now created a shared parameter file, assigned those to the family, and now saved that family.